Well, here we go with 2024. The first really big release in what is lining up to be a massive year comes from Mackie. Of course, the Mackie DLZ Creator XS is one. Stay tuned for that. That review is coming up. But also this, the Mackie Mainstream. Something that not only mirrors the Rode Streamer X from last year, but also improves upon it with one massive feature. But we'll get into that in a bit. First, let's take a walk around this unit and see what we get. The build quality is really, well, Mackie. The chassis is plastic, but it's not cheap whatsoever. It actually feels quite solid. It's not overly light, and I really like the angle it sits on when it's on my desk. It's a really nice looking unit, and it looks even better when you power it on. As for the features on the unit, first off, you will notice a lot more hardware control on this unit compared to the Streamer X. And I think that's on purpose. While having a feature in software is just as good, it is far from handy if it isn't easily accessible. And just reaching out and turning a knob will always be better than bringing up a screen and finding the control, especially if you're streaming. As for all those little buttons and knobs, yeah, they feel good. Not a lot of friction in the knobs, though that is a preference thing. And the buttons all have a nice tactile click to them. Also, kind of a preference thing. This thing also has a meter, and a nice one at that. But keep in mind, it's actually a monitoring meter, not an input meter. As much as I pride myself on intellect, it took me a little too long to realize that. And lastly, on the front, this thing actually has controls for, wait for it, monitors. The ability to switch from headphones to monitors is a really nice upgrade from the Streamer X. And if I'm being honest, that's the one thing that kept the Streamer X off my main desk, because I need to go between headphones and monitors in my day-to-day. Of course, you also have those assignable buttons up there. That is a feature that is yet to come out though. They have said that these buttons just mirror the F buttons on your keyboard, so you should be able to set them up like that as we wait for the Matrix software that is apparently coming soon. Let me know down below if you want me to cover that software when it comes out. Now, when you get around to the back of the unit, you're going to see all the rest. One single XLR in, that is a combo jack if you want to use this to shred on guitar, I guess. And there's also an input for headsets with a 3.5mm jack. Also, another feature added is the ability to run audio from another device over a 3.5mm jack as well. Now, this allows you to have a guest for a just chatting setup. Of course, you also have the HDMI in and pass-through. Yes, we will talk about that in a bit. As well as two USB-C inputs. One is a USB 3.2 and the other is a USB 2.0. And those two work as really any kind of input. And this is where it gets interesting. USB mics? Sure. Webcam? Double sure. This is one of those added features that never came out with the Streamer X that a lot of people wanted. Specifically, the ability to run a webcam if you're streaming a console game. That's very cool. And lastly, you have the power and USB connector for your computer. And this is important. This thing is bus powered, and it also requires USB 3.1. Now, you need to use the cable that comes with the unit or another cable that is very good quality with the ability of super speeds and power delivery. Remember, not all USB cables are created equally, but there's another pitfall to be wary of, and that is the computer inputs you have. Not all USB-C inputs on your computer are super speed or have power delivery either. My PC is a perfect example. The USB-C input is just 3.0 and will not work with the mainstream. So then, with all that out of the way, let's talk about the specs. I know this is perhaps a bit of a sticking point for some. So this thing is 2 in and 2 out. It's 24-bit, 48 kilohertz for audio, 60 dB of gain on the XLR input, and the capture card offers 1080p and 60 FPS, while the pass-through allows 4K 60 so you can keep your resolution while you're gaming. And that means this thing streams at 1080p. And for those of you that are turning your nose up at that, you do realize Twitch doesn't even support streaming in 4K, which I get it is a bit of an oversimplification, but 4K and streaming on Twitch isn't as simple as you might think. It's more due to a restriction on bitrate, but again, 4K and Twitch don't really get along. And for the most part, a lot of people don't have a connection fast enough to support streaming at 4K. In fact, a good portion of people struggle to get streaming at 1080-60 without jitters. And frankly, if 4K 60 is a deal breaker for you, the Streamer X has it. Anyways, lastly on specs, and because this thing is bus powered and it doesn't have its own power supply, high impedance headphones are a bit of a no-go. I tried out my DT770 Pros and it didn't give a very satisfying experience. I should also mention one of the best-selling features of this thing over the Streamer X, and that is the price. This thing retails for $299, a whole $100 less than the Streamer X. And considering all the upgrades and usability, that's pretty impressive. So then, with all that aside, should you buy this, the Mackie Mainstream? I mean, for a device that does it all and has a bunch of cool features above and beyond the Streamer X, this thing's pretty cool. I really enjoyed the experience I had streaming with it. Now, I used it with the PS5 to kind of get the full experience with the webcam and all that, and I felt like I was in complete control the whole time. Now, there are some user errors that got in the way of me streaming at first, things like knowing to shut off the HDCP on the PS5 so it allowed streaming, as well as the aforementioned USB-C snafu on my PC. But if you already know all that stuff and you aren't a streaming idiot like me, well, you should have no problem. For what it's worth, if you want the complete comparison between the units, the added features on this compared to the Streamer X are monitor outs, physical controls for all of your audio, phone connectivity, and the ability to use USB mics or a webcam through USB. If all of that is important to you, well, this just might be your huckleberry. However, what the Streamer X has that the Mackie does not is 4K capture, and I think this one might be just as important. Those Revolution preamps with 70 dB of gain. That 10 dB of gain difference might mean the world to some. When I started my stream, I was using the pod mic, and honestly, 60 dB of gain wasn't enough for me to get my voice up and out of the mix. So if you're going with the mainstream and you're rocking a dynamic, you might actually need a gain booster. It's been a while since I've had to rely on 60 dB of gain. But then, I guess that is the ultimate question here. Is 4K and 10 dB worth $100 to you? I'll leave that up to you, as this should come down to your use case. Let me know which one suits your setup down below. All this stuff is linked down there as well if you want to check it out for yourself. Cheers, and I'll see you in the next video.